Good morning. Again. So last week we covered 3 verses in Genesis, or three chapters. Stayed up late last night. Stacy and the boys got home safely, and so firing on 3 out of 4 cylinders this morning. But we did a deep dive looking in Genesis, starting with what's gone wrong in the world, the need for God to reset. We left off at the end of chapter 7, kind of with a dark night of the soul, where the waters prevail on the earth for 150 days. And we're kind of right in the middle of this event, this cataclysmic event, that things had gotten so bad on the earth that God decided he was going to wipe out every living creature. And it's a story we've heard so many times. We hear it in Sunday school. We've grown up with the story of Noah, that we don't understand the emotional toll, again, of Noah and the family on the boat, that as long as they have lived, as long as Noah has been alive, and as long as he was there, and all the number of people, as he's in that boat, that he knows are drowning outside. We always sort of get this picture that just kind of get in the boat, and things are starting, and you see the people out there, and Noah and his family are on the inside rather unaffected. But that is not what happened. All of humanity, except for one family, comes to an end. This was the favor that Noah and his family found in the sight of the Lord. Really, it was just Noah. Noah's the one that's mentioned. Kids get to come along, and their wives. And so they're now in the boat, and part of this is maybe wondering what's going to happen next. That when you put yourself kind of in that situation where you've gone through something, all of a sudden life has been in this upheaval, and you're just kind of in a holding pattern because you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what's going to occur. There's been a couple times in my life where I've sort of felt that way, that God has brought me to a place, and I'm like, I know I can't stay here, but I have no idea where I'm going, and I have no idea what's coming next. And so this brings us into chapter 8. So we're going to be looking today at chapters 8, 9, and 10. So again, another large portion, because really these 6 chapters capture the entire story of Noah. So that's part of the reason why is we're looking and dividing up Genesis, trying to get somewhat of the bigger picture with some of these events, because we're so accustomed to isolating and taking the little portions that we don't see the bigger picture. So starting in chapter 8, verse 1, but God remembered Noah. Now right there, again, can't even get in 4 words, and I'll stop him for a second. This is not a remember of kind of like God's hanging out, and all of a sudden he looks down and he's like, oh yeah, my bad, I put them in a boat. That's not that kind of remembrance. See, I do this kind of thing. I do this kind of thing where, like, where's my child? Oh yeah, I sent them outside. I wonder if they're okay. Or what, you all of a sudden remember, hey, I left them here. Let's go check on them. Let's see what's happened. God is saying that there's a sense that what's happening is he's remembering, not intellectually. God's not like, oops, left him in a boat. It's the beginning of this new effect. It's that God, it's the sense of God is the ultimate rememberer, too many R's in there, because he never forgets. And there's this case where Noah is not forgotten, is the idea. Noah's not forgotten. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep, which, by the way, right there, I didn't even, as I was, again, it's 3 chapters. I did some deep diving. I know enough in the Hebrew, the whole idea of the wind, this harkens right back to chapter 1. Remember that God's Spirit was over the face of the deep? The word Spirit, many times, wind, same word. Same word. So we have almost a throwback to what happened in Genesis. God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heaven were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained. The waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of the 150 days, the water had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of the 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. And it went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Now here's the question you should be asking that you're not asking. You with me? The text just gave us very specific detail. On the 10th month, 1st day, the mountains were visible. But Noah hadn't opened up his window yet. Who's seeing the mountains? Who wrote the book of Genesis? Interactive portion. Who wrote Genesis? Moses. So when Moses is writing the book of Genesis, one of the things that he's being given is a whole lot of special information. And one of the really cool things Moses had that we forget he had is he had a tent. And he called the tent of meeting, because it's literally where he went and he could speak verbally to the Lord and hold a conversation. So when people ask, how did Moses know about this? As he is wandering in the desert for 40 years, and as God is giving him the revelation, this is why he's able to have kind of this pinpoint, like, on this day, at this time, this is what happened, because this is what God is letting him know. This is a part of that special revelation that Moses had access to, that many of the people, when they were inspired, they were carried on by the Spirit. Here, he's able to hold a conversation, and so Moses is asking, how did this all go down? He's been told. So that's why when we look, and a lot of people question, who was there to watch? It was God, and God is the one who told Moses, and Moses is the author. You with me? So, verse 8. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to the ark. She returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days and again sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Now, again, this is where people, I've had so many people challenge me on the story of Noah's Ark, and it has been even in the halls of this church. This whole idea, if the flood waters raged on the earth, how was there a tree still standing such that you could pluck an olive leaf from the tree? But again, this is the whole concept of the miraculous nature that God is doing in this cleansing of the earth. That he says he's cleansing the living creatures. So there is a sense that people have talked about, if there was this flood, you would have had all this salty water mix, nothing would have been able to grow for years and years, there would have been no life. This is part of the miracle, that as the waters are subsiding, there is vegetation there such that when they come out of the ark, they can pick up where they left off. And the miraculous nature of the entire flood narrative and what God is doing, it makes it no problem that if he wants to have the trees intact, God has those trees, because without them, Noah and his family wouldn't be able to survive. Nothing would continue on. None of the animals would be able to function. Verse 12. Then he waited another 7 days, sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the ground. And they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. Then Noah built an ark to the Lord and took some of every clean animal, because remember, 7 sets of clean animals, and some of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Never will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seedtime and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, shall not cease. So in this first chapter, as we're looking, we have the remembrance, and this is a restoration. God, in his not forgetting Noah, his plan of restoration is in place. God's Spirit is there. It's almost this image of hovering over the waters. God is restoring the earth because, again, now we're in earth 2.0. We were in 1.0, where God got things going, and man just ran such amok that God said, nope, we have got to fix this. It's almost the kind of thing where it's the question I ask when you have a society and the society has become so filled with vices, how do you turn that? How do you change that? This is one of the reasons why America offered a unique situation when people began leaving Europe and coming over here. Part of what they were doing is they were able to restart a new culture. So it's much easier. This is, and to be honest, this is why many seminarians, many people in seminary, they're going in and their goals, when they get out, they're going to go plant a church because an established church has all the baggage. The established church, how do you break into a church culture that's filled with vices? It's way easier to start over. Much, much easier. Because again, you can build it up rather than having to break the old habits, put in the new. So this is why man had become so bad. That's what God essentially did, is he did a restart. He just basically brought everything down, and his goal was, again, a restoration. He wants to restore, and so as the waters go, we see it's a restoration. The land is, in a sense, cleaned. It's almost a picture of baptism. The whole idea that the water itself doesn't spiritually clean the earth, but there's a sense that this water has produced a cleansing. And where we are now, with coming out of the ark, we have a command: be fruitful and multiply. Same command from the beginning, that he basically tells the animals, go forth, be fruitful, multiply. And so this is the preservation. He's preserved all of these animals, preserved these people, because God, his creation is good. At the very beginning, we were told he created good things. And when even us as his creation, we are still good because we bear that image of God. But there's a corruption. And so God is trying to restore and preserve the goodness that he made. Which picks us up in chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fear the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. So in other words, in Earth 1.0, we had a different relationship with the animals. That they were not, in that sense, afraid of us. There wasn't this kind of hostility. We lived a little bit more at peace with them. But now the fear of them, because, verse 3, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. This was not so beforehand. It was not the case. Now, we're allowed to eat meat. But dead things, not living things, as he says. And I give to you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat the flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from every man, from his fellow man, I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. And we have here not a new command, not a new idea. God is just trying to reestablish, I have made people special. They bear my image. So that's why when you kill one another, you are attacking the image of God. This is the dignity of human life. And that this is why murder is wrong from the beginning. Murder's not wrong because it's a law, and it's not right if it's legalized. We ought not kill one another. And you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth, and multiply in it. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, Behold, I establish my covenant with you, and your offspring after you, and with every living thing that is with you, the birds and the livestock, every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark, for it is every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. By the way, again, questions you're not asking. Many believers, they question, was this a local flood or a universal flood? If it was a local flood, God promised he'd never do it again. God still floods locally, wasn't a local flood. Super easy logic. Verse 13, I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant that I've established between me and all flesh on the earth. So in this preservation, God gives a sign, and this is what we call the Noetic covenant. The covenant God makes with Noah, and it's where we get the term the rainbow. And we look at the rainbow. Now here's the fun thing, because I know your Hebrew's a little rusty. In Hebrew, there's a word for bow, and there's only one kind of bow that's used as. It's the war bow, the bow that you would use for going to battle. God has, in a sense, done battle with the earth, and he has cleansed the earth. And the image is he takes his war bow, the sign of war, okay, for us it'd be the rifle, and if you take your rifle, you hang your rifle up, it means you're done, right? You put the rifle up, you're storing it. God takes his war bow and hangs it in the sky to show he's done. That's what that rainbow represents for us. It's not just the pretty sign. It's God saying, I'm done. I won't do this again. Now, later on, he's going to deal with things with fire. That's another thing. Again, look at the terms of the covenant. He's like, I'm not going to flood you out. And we all think, great, but we read in Peter, he's going to burn us out eventually because God's not going to allow injustice to stand. But he shows us here this whole preservation. He preserves people. He's like, look, this is how you're supposed to behave. This is how you're supposed to act. This is how you should relate to one another. Let's do it right this time. Verse 18. The sons of Noah who went out from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. That's a parenthetical, but that's for, again, Moses' audience. Canaan caused a lot of problems. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these people of the whole earth were dispersed. Now, one thing that's really cool is we're able to show, when we look at these people, these sons, Japheth, we're able to follow, and there's the sense that these are the ones who went northern and maritime. So in other words, Europe, that whole region, there's a sense that, going back to Noah, you might ask, which one are we from? Any one of the European descent, the line of Japheth. Basic idea. That was the large group. It was Ham was some in the Middle East and down into Africa. But Shem, these are the ones who head out more in the Middle East and further east, which is why today when you hear about Semitic people, because Shem, no, your Hebrew's rusty again. There's the word, the letter that starts with a SH sound, has a dot. Drop the dot, it's just an S. So the Semitic people are the sons of Shem. You with me? So that's why when we look in the Middle East and you talk about Semitic people, Semitic languages, sons of Shem, this is what we see. This is where even our language derives from this today. So we have a restoration, a preservation, but all is not entirely well. Verse 20, Noah began to be a man of the soil, as a farmer, and planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. So he got drunk, got naked, passed out. Literally, that's what it says, okay? And Ham, the father of Canaan. Did you notice that? That's the second time. Ham, by the way, he fathered Canaan. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Now, people are super divided on this verse. Okay, Noah's out. It's been a while. Planting a vineyard, raising a vineyard, having wine. It's been a couple of moons, okay? This didn't happen like the next day. It took a while. But eventually, this is what happens. Noah is blacked out, drunk. Ham comes in, sees his father's nakedness. Now, some people, they think, is this a euphemism? Did something happen? I'm going to take the least gruesome possibility of this, is just the fact that in the ancient culture, shame and honor is a really big deal. And he has seen his father blacked out, drunk, which is pretty shameful. Okay, I grew up alcoholic parents. I don't know if you know what it's like to see your parents drunk and nearly blacked out. I do. It's pretty shameful. Ham sees this and goes, rather than taking care of his dad, he's already seen his dad, rather than covering him up, he goes out and he says, hey guys, guess what? Guess what dad just did? 23, then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backwards, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backwards, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, cursed be Canaan, not Ham, Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. He also said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. This act, what we're seeing is not an isolated incident. I want you guys to think about this. If you have siblings, you know your siblings pretty well. Like, you know what kind of people they are. I have some brothers, and some of you have heard about me talk about some of my brothers. Some of them make very poor decisions. When my dad passed away a couple of years ago, my sons found out that they have a third uncle. They didn't even know. Okay? So I understand what this is like, that certain people, like when you have certain family members, and particularly you got a sibling, you kind of know how they are. And you know what happens with those kind of people? They produce children like themselves. That has been the case in my family. I've watched this happen. What we're seeing is that Ham and Canaan, his children, there are vices at work. There are qualities of people that Noah has recognized. This is not good. He lays down a curse upon his grandchild, Canaan. And what we see is that in this preservation, there are still problems, and what happens here sets the tone for the very thing that Israel was facing the days when Moses was writing this book. Verse 28, After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. No extra cost of admission this morning. When you take the flood and you line up the dates, if Abraham was the firstborn child, which we're not sure, like Father Abraham, if he was the firstborn child, Noah was still alive when Abraham was born, by the way. When you look at the genealogies and the timeline. So that's another reason why, is it possible, like what went on during the flood, Abraham and his family would have been around that they could have talked to Noah himself because of the longevity that was still in play. So we have a restoration, a preservation, and now the continuation. Chapter 10, what's often called the Table of Nations. Another list of names. We're going to walk through this because, again, nobody spends their devotion time reading genealogies. And this is probably one of the most important genealogies in this book. Chapter 10. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. Verse 2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Now we're going to stop right there because some of you are like, okay, we have names. It's like if I start randomly naming my family members. But you should recognize some that are listed here. He mentions Magog. This is the Magog who's mentioned this is the father of those who would ultimately become the northernmost enemy. Because again, Japheth, they go north. This is the Magog mentioned in Ezekiel. This is the people of Magog, also associated Revelation 20, verse 8. When we talk about Magog and God coming from and causing problems coming down from the north, this is the guy who becomes the great-great-grandpappy of all these people who are going to cause us problems. We have, at the beginning with the Table of Nations, we now have an Earth 2.0, which is where we are. How did we get to the place we are, where we are in the Middle East? Genesis is actually setting this up, that part of the reasons why there will be no peace in the Middle East until the people in the Middle East stop being the people they are, is because of what happens here in Genesis. It starts here, more is going to happen. But we have just from these names, major tribes, major people that especially in the days of Moses, they're like, oh, that's where these guys come from. Verse 3, the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Japheth likes to get creative with his naming. These are harder. The sons of Javan, Elishish, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. Again, great names for future pets. Verse 5, some of these from the coastland people spread in the lands, each with his own language, by their clans in their nations. So we see here, we see the start. We see that all these people that Israel is dealing with, all the peoples, and there's sense, even though sometimes the names change, even though cultures shift, there is, in many ways, this continual line through the Middle East that they can trace many times the ancestries back. This is where it got started. Verse 6, the sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Now, some translations, when you look, you didn't see Egypt. This comes from some of the Hebrew word for Egypt is Mizram. So some of your translations will say Mizram, some say Egypt. Like, this is the Egypt. This is the start of what would become Egypt, these people. We have the Ethiopians, the sons of Cush, the people who are living in North Africa. Here we have the start of these nations that as we're reading, we read about Cush and we read about Egypt and we read about these people, all of a sudden we're now seeing where these come from, that there's this sense, again, we're all interconnected. We're all related. But now we have what we call the tribalism. Everybody's moving into their own little groups. And what's happening, particularly with the sons of Ham, these guys immediately, almost immediately, cast off God and the knowledge of God. And they replace it with other deities, other things, and this will cause all these problems for Israel very, very soon. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabat, Ramah, and Sabteka, that one. The sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man, meaning in Earth 2.0. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Which incidentally, any of you remember Bugs Bunny? Bugs Bunny calls Elmer Fudd a regular Nimrod. And we often take that to be as he's calling him an insult. But he's literally, because Fudd was a hunter, it was a biblical reference in the Looney Tunes. That's why he calls him a Nimrod. Because that's why it says, it'd be like a Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. See, we didn't know our Bibles. We missed that. Verse 10. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel. We've heard that one before. Nimrod, the mighty hunter, establishes Babel, which will be the Babylon later on. Which, by the way, the Babylon, you know where Babylon was? That's Iraq and Iran, just in case anybody wonders if that area is, I don't know, significant and the people. There is Erech, Akkad, Calneh, and the land of Shinar. That whole Shinar is the larger area where Babel was. So again, the larger portion of Iraq and Iran. From that land, he went into Assyria and built Nineveh. So here's Nimrod establishing the people of Babylon and the country of Assyria that are going to put Israel in captivity long time later. All right here. Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. Egypt fathered Ludim, Anamim, Labim, Naphthalim, Pat, Cas, from whom the Philistines came, and Kath. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through these pretty easily. From whom the Philistines came. This one chapter is establishing the entire dramatic narrative for the rest of the book of Genesis. And I would say for a larger portion of the rest of the Old Testament. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, who would basically live in Jerusalem. The Amorites, constantly causing problems. The Girgashites, we do see them as well. The Hivitites, the Architites, and the Sinaites. And the Arvadites, and the Zemarites, and the Hamathatites. Afterwards, the clan of the Canaanites dispersed. So who are the Canaanites? All of these. The ones who were cursed by Noah and then all of a sudden these sons of Shem come into the land. Do you understand that we look at this, we don't understand the history, that we look at this and we're like, we don't think in terms of these family ancestries. Sometimes we do, sometimes we're like, what's your lineage, where are you from, what does this kind of work? I was joking earlier about Arkansas, almost like Nazareth, what good comes out of Arkansas? So we look at this, and again, I don't hold it against them. Arkansas, that's cool. I hear you left. So that's, again, it's your favor. So when some people watching this, like, what is this problem? It's all good fun. We look at this, and we're so unaccustomed to thinking this way that this familial heritage means something, carries with them. 19, the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon, the direction of Gerar, and as far as Gaza. We've heard that term. In the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zebolim, as far as Lesha. So Sodom, Gomorrah, those whole towns, again, all from the sons of Ham. What were Sodom and Gomorrah? Again, all of these things we're reading in Genesis, we take them almost like this buffet. I have a little bit of this, a little bit of this. We have lost the interconnection that's here. That God is letting us know these problems you're having, they're not random. These kinds of things you're experiencing are happening because there's a history that's in play. Verse 20, these are the sons of Ham, and by their clans, their language, their lands, and their nations. To Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem, Elam, Ashur, Arp, Lud, Aram, the sons of Aram, Uz, reading the book of Job, the land of Uz, Hul, Gether, Mash. Arp fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg. Not Pegleg. Let me get that right. Peleg. For in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan fathered Aum, Sheleph, Haz, Jerah, Had, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abi, Sheba, or Ophir, Hav, and Joab. All these were the sons of Joktan. The territory in which they live extended from Mesha in the direction of Sephar to the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. Their languages. At this point in the history, as we're considering Noah, there's only one language. We're being told that because of Babel, this is part of the whole derivation. These are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies in the nations, and from these the nations spread upon the earth after the flood. So as we look at this, and we look at a history, and again, it's far removed. We look at this, and you might think, okay, this is interesting. And part of you might be thinking, how does this relate to me today? And yet, we are reminded every time we do prayer requests about the conflicts in the Middle East. Iran, Iraq, all those areas, all those people. Why is there such unrest? Because the first thing that God tells us in Earth 2.0 is we started running amok all over again. We have a history of being people who flee the Lord, doing our own thing, the selfishness, I'm not even getting to chapter 11. They were told, multiply and fill the earth, and the first thing they do is go, nope. God takes Sid very seriously. He has destroyed the earth. It's cleansed. Go do it right this time. And immediately we fall into sin. This is an image of us. This is an image. These nations inherited from their forefathers the sins. All the sons of Ham were cursed because of the sins of Ham. And there is this generational curse that follows. And so as God has tried to restore, there is a curse that tends to follow. Where it impacts us today is because you might in your life you might experience and be experiencing what we would call those generational curses. The sins of your fathers, the sins of your forefathers, the sins of those around you, and you suffer from that. And we're looking, it's not a new kind of story. And God has been in the business of taking and restoring and redeeming for millennia. And sometimes we feel we look and we're a victim of this situation, and yet the number of people, what also we see later in the book of Genesis, even though there were people who were born under those curses and people who were born separated from the people of God, we will see restoration. We will see God reach out among all these nations and reach people and bring them back to himself. That no matter what your background is, no matter what you have experienced, no matter your lineage. I always joke and say, sort of joke, I come from a long line of Irish pagans. Not entirely wrong. Not entirely wrong. And then in many ways I look how God, through his grace, preserved me, pulled me from that, and so many times in my life, I ask myself, I look at myself, and I was like, have I fallen back to my roots? Because that's what they did here. And that's what we have to look. As we read this story, it's our story. That some of you, you might think, well, I had a pretty good mom and dad. Maybe you had a good background. But all of us have this baggage we carry with us. And in the days of Noah, we see this. We see the baggage being packed. That's what chapter 10 is. It's the packing of the baggage. And it is going to plague Israel and has plagued us even to this day. God says it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to lean into that. You don't have to suffer that. And when we look at the rest of the story of Genesis, this is the setup. We look and we see that God calls people, and that's the question for you. Has God called you out from whatever baggage you've had, from whatever background you've been part of? Has God called you out? Because this is what he's going to do. People are trying to go their own way, and God keeps reaching, and he keeps trying to restore. He keeps trying to preserve. He keeps trying to reach out and bring this salvation. And we must decide, as God is the preserver and the restorer, are we going to continue in the sins of our ancestors and our culture? Or are we going to be the kind of people that receive that restoration in our souls? Pray with me. Father, as we come this morning, as we've traveled a lot in Scripture. We've looked at your servant Noah. We find a man who was upright, who was blameless, and 2 out of 3 of his kids got the message. 2 out of 3 were like him to some degree. That even a man you call righteous and blameless, the mistakes he made. Father, we look at this and we take comfort because we know that our righteousness, we're living a day where our righteousness comes by faith in Jesus Christ. Your word says that when we believe in Christ through our faith, we have the righteousness of Christ. That when we recount our resume, when we recount our failures, when we recount our families and the things that we have had to endure, and we see the unrighteousness around us, we look and we don't have to be victims. We can be freed by faith in Jesus Christ. And so, Father, we thank you for this gospel. We thank you as we're reminded that we as people are just really generally bad at living. And maybe this morning there are some who feel that way. We remember more our mistakes more than we look to the cross. We face the consequences of our sin and we despair, forgetting that the sin debt has been paid. That, Father, what Noah went through, he could only look forward to the salvation that was to come. And we get to look back at the salvation that was brought. So may we this morning remember our blessedness. May we remember the goodness and the richness that comes through Christ. And may we remember that as we've watched humanity get going, as we look around us and we see what's going on, we remember all things are pointed to that final day when your Son will return and he will make all things new without flaw. Strengthen our hearts as we wait for that day.